Welcome to another episode of Real Deal Investing. I'm Jerron Kelley, your host, along with my co-host Larry Mastropieri. Welcome. And today we've got an awesome guest. We've got Aviv Elbaz. Welcome, Aviv.
Hi, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
Our pleasure. Great to have you, and thanks for taking the time to be here. So Aviv is a friend of mine, client for a number of years now. We also know a lot of the same people and brokers in the industry, and but Aviv is a man who wears a number of hats. But I'd say, how would you define your position? It could kind of be defined as property management, but it's more than just that.
So we always introduce ourselves as owners-operators.
Okay.
We do both the asset management and the property management. So yes, we're wearing a lot of hats, coming from finding the properties that we want to acquire, all the way through the process of acquisition, and then obviously to manage them throughout the life cycle of the property.
Cool. Okay, good stuff. Before we dive into the juicy stuff, let's just talk about kind of how you got into this, and you have an interesting story, of how you got there, your journey. You told it to me over some drinks a month or two ago, and it was very unique. But why don't you give us sort of the highlights of that and how you got here and into property management?
I'm a CPA by trade. I was going through school, doing my CPA degree, and started working at a firm. Worked there for about 5 years.
Wait, you're skipping over the fun stuff. The whole bartender for 5 or 6 years.
We will.
Aviv, he was a party animal for years. That's
this can be like a 10-hour interview.
No, okay. We'll gloss over
and
that.
PG-13, so we need to see where we want to go.
Yeah, let's keep it PG. Okay. Skipping past the bartender years.
So bartending years, I was during school. Obviously, it took me forever to finish.
You went to school in Tel Aviv?
I went to school near Tel Aviv. Yeah,
cool.
But I was working in Tel Aviv in the bars and parties. Party a lot. And then I finally started my internship as a CPA, coming from one world. But before of that, I'm coming really from sales. For over 11 years, I worked at one of the biggest cell phone company providers in Israel. I did mostly sales, but at the end of it, for the last couple of years, I didn't really want to become a manager, because it was like, hey, I'm doing it while I'm in school. But I did train employees and I trained managers. So coming from that world to the bartending, and then all of a sudden sitting behind the desk as a CPA, that was a weird transition.
Sure.
But I always liked the numbers. I always was intrigued by it. And one of the reasons I became a CPA, it's a funny story. I dated this American girl back in Israel. Her father was the CFO of the airline, El Al, the Israeli airline company. Wow. One weekend, I come to him, 21 years old, don't know much about life, don't know what I want to do really. I was like, what are you doing? He was like showing me graphs and Excels. He's like buying airplanes for hundreds of millions of dollars. And I was like, okay, what do you do? He was like, I'm the CEO of El Al. I'm like, all right, fine. What do I need to do to become a CFO? He was like, you need to be an accountant. You need to be a CPA. I was like, cool, I'll go and study CPA. Wow. I'll become a CPA. And that was the story of how I got into it.
Okay.
And then throughout the years as a CPA, we come from the audit world, the basic financials audit. But a part of the things that we did in the firm was also forensic audit, internal audit, consulting for companies. And a lot of them were actually real estate companies, public companies in Israel. Some of them operate obviously around the world, including the US. And from learning all their procedures and numbers and how they operate, we kind of were already involved in the business. And then the family that we represent, we're basically representing a big family from Israel, a very wealthy one. They own most of the equity. They have, I think, over 85% of the equity in our company on the real estate side. And they have a business of elderly care at home. Almost 13,000 employees in Israel. They've been doing it for over 30 years. Their main customer is Social Security. And with all the profits that they had back at 2007, 8, 9, they started buying single-family homes here. Very great deals, very great opportunities. And as their portfolio growing, they weren't really here. They started using a third-party management based here in Florida. At some point, they came to one of the owners of SAR Management, which they knew for over 20 years, is a CPA as well. And they told him, listen, we don't think we're making that much money or that much return on our properties. Can you check it out? And coming from the audit world, he started looking into the things, and I think they kind of realized the third-party management really is doing their numbers and making the profit on the back of them. And they decided that they want to open their own management company. They started doing it by finding local people here, but they still felt like it's having someone they don't know here while they're back in Israel. It's still like having a third-party management, and they really wanted someone they know, they trust, and I came up to their mind, and they're like, all right, let's do it. So a little over 7.5 years ago, I came here with one suitcase. They dropped me here and told me, you need to start a management company.
Have you been here? Had you been here before?
I traveled since I was, I'm a 90s kid. Grew up on all the MJs, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, Magic Johnson, all those things. I always say it. And then Mike Tyson, who was the MT in between all of them. But I was intrigued by the American culture, the NBA, the hip hop, all of that growing up. I first came here when I was 18 years old, doing a little coast to coast with a friend before we joined the military. Great crazy thing, we actually have a picture at the top of the Twin Towers, like 105th floor, a couple of maybe 6 months before 9/11. And then I knew I will come back here. I always told my parents as a kid, I'm going to live in the States someday. That was the mindset. I traveled multiple times after the military. It was, I'll travel for 5 days in New York to do some shopping and go back. And then eventually, so it was always in my mind to be here. I can't explain it. It just happened this way. And I remember before coming here, when they came to me with the offer to do property management in Miami, I was like, okay, cool. I'm already a CPA at that point. Almost 10 years of experience in studying, and now I have to do a change. I was 34 years old. How do you go from everything that you invested to something brand new? I was already offered partnership at the firm I worked at, so now it's a big change. And I remember asking them, okay, what will I have to do? And their answer was, you'll figure it out.
Wow.
And when I came
it's a lot of trust.
That's a lot of trust.
It's a lot of trust.
But it's a lot of trust that you put in them, too.
Yeah.
Because that's dangerous. You're pulling the rug out from underneath your career, your stability. And you even told me before the podcast started that the owner of the accounting firm that you work for had you picked out to be his, the person that was going to take over the office. The office after him, yeah.
So having a Jewish mom coming to her after everything she's invested in me, all those years in school and all of that, and finally till I made it, and come to her and tell her, I think I'm moving to Miami to manage properties. And one of her first questions was also, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm not sure. And her answer was, well, you have to go to people's apartments, knock on their doors, asking for money. I was like, maybe. I don't know yet. I'll figure it out. But, in my mindset, it was always a matter of worst case scenario. I can always go back to Israel. I'm still a CPA. I'll be able to do it.
Sure.
I always can go back.
You'll survive, yeah.
Everyone who knows me, including my parents, friends, family, wife, all of them knew it's a one-way ticket. I always said that, first of all, I will always bet on myself. It's up to me whether we succeed or not, so I'll take the chance.
Right. Amen.
Amazing.
Were you single at that time, married? You mentioned wife.
I was married.
Okay.
I was married.
Kids or no?
So we started the whole process of getting the visa to come here. And I remember the owner, Mr. Nathan, calling me 11:30 at night, telling me, your visa was approved, you're going. Because it was a long process. It was almost 6 to 9 months to get the visa. During that time, I was still working as a CPA, already now with a boss that knows that I'm leaving. Oh, and he gave me some hard time on that.
Yeah, sure.
But eventually he calls me, tells me, I got the visa, you're moving. I remember waking my wife at 11:30 at night, telling her, we got the visa, we're moving. And she was like, no way, I can't believe it. Not even 2 days later, she wakes me up 6:30 in the morning and tells me I'm pregnant. And I told her, no way. And until this day, we have the picture before we told my parents of her holding the visa in one hand and her pregnancy test on the other. And
cool.
when we showed
Two
that
big
picture to my
surprises.
parents, they were
Yeah.
like, they caught the visa, they didn't understand what's the other thing until they realized it.
That's so
great.
funny.
And then we moved, and I came here 7 years ago. I moved here about a month and a half before her. Obviously, she couldn't travel in the first trimester and all of that, but it was also giving me the time to start finding an apartment, open a bank account, find a car. I was here with one suitcase.
Yeah.
And living in a hotel at the beginning, and then you guys know you need to apply for an apartment. You don't have any credit history. You don't have anything. But because I knew the back that I have back in Israel between the owners and the owners of Sour Management, the owners of the properties, the Nathans, they supported me. So everything that I needed, they were there to help us, to help me out to succeed, because obviously it was all of our goal. And, you know, I had the first days was, okay, today I'll go open a bank account. Then I'll go get my social security number. Then find an apartment. That was the beginning. The first 3 months was really just settling in. Then we started interviewing, because obviously even though I came from the audit world of real estate, I didn't know property management. I was just dropped here, and then I started going through hiring the professionals that can help, property managers. We actually hired a broker at the beginning because we thought that's what we need to lease the apartments. At that point, we had a lot of single-family homes. It was somewhere around 50 or 60 single-family homes and about another 200 units that were scattered, multifamilies, duplex, fourplex, all of those things.
And you were buying those mostly in South Florida at that time,
all of them were only South
Broward
Florida.
County mostly?
Broward and Miami-Dade.
And Miami-Dade, okay.
Yeah, that were the two locations.
And before, I don't want to, you've got a great story going on here, but I kind of want to drill down a little bit here and there. So at the initial buy box, what was that initial buy box, and why did you go into single family and the smaller multifamily?
When Mr.
And sorry, one other question.
Yeah.
This is about 7 years ago, starting in 2014, 15? I'm sorry, that would be
I came here about 7 years ago.
2017. 18, yeah.
2017.
But he had already owned all these assets.
Oh, he
right?
already owned those assets.
So his story
Got it.
was,
Okay.
he's a surfer by heart. Day in, day out, until this day, he's over 60 years old. He's surfing almost every day.
Wow.
And he came here and he went to a surf shop in South Beach, and he met a guy who told him, and they started a conversation, and he was like, yeah, you know what, I'm thinking about maybe buying a house. There's great deals here. He had the cash to do this. And really, he bought houses for under $100K at the time.
When was this?
2008.
Okay.
2009, this is where it starts. And he bought everything cash. There was no financing at that point. I think also because the guy who managed for us didn't really understand the financing aspect of it. He actually met the guy at the surfboard shop, and that's what the guy was doing at that time. He had this little shop, and he told him, yeah, I'll help you out. And then he started buying and buying and buying and buying more. Then it became from the single-family homes to duplex, to fourplex, 10 units, 12 units, and then they grew the portfolio little by little. I think the first time we did any finance was 2014. All of a sudden, again, it was after we came in to audit most of the properties, so we started asking, hey, why don't you finance a lot of it? And from that point on, we kept going towards the multifamily. The purchase criteria wasn't really there. Again, what was presented to the owner at the time compared to the real life was two different stories.
Sure.
I think for him, maybe he was here once during those 10 years, and he really trusted the guy, and he told him, listen, this is a great deal, and this is a great deal. We'd sign him the signature pages and be done with it. And a lot of the things we had in our mindset of how to operate the properties once I do get here was a lot of misconception coming from what was presented to us. And a lot of the things came up. I remember one of the first things that really stand out, it was, to them it was always presented that you have to pay a 6% commission. Okay? When you buy, when you sell, there's always this fixed rate of 6%. After the first day when I hired the broker, I was like, hey, what's the story about the 6%? I was like, you can put 0%. You can get whatever you want. And when we started looking into the numbers and we checked all the history, it was to the point with the 6% that even when he bought a property from a different broker and would split the commission and get his 3 and the other guy would get 3, he would still charge the owner as a buyer for another 6%.
Wow.
Like the things that we saw afterwards.
The guy was making money.
He was making a lot of money.
Wow, that's shady. That's too bad.
It was shady,
taking advantage of
too
him.
bad. And
Instead of doing the right thing, yeah.
I would only say that I'm thankful for that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
It's true.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have this opportunity. So when I did came here, and the first year was really, they didn't know what my capabilities are. They knew me as an intern and then as a young CPA. My interview with Mr. Nathan was at his home one evening. I met him and his wife, and we had a very nice conversation. He was like, yeah, he's the guy for us, so let's move it. But they didn't know if I can do it. They didn't know if I'm a real manager. And I talk about it a lot, that you either you cannot teach someone to be a manager. It's either you have it or not. And they gave me the opportunity, and we started rolling with that. So the first year was really, I needed to learn the business. And can I manage the current portfolio that we have, and what can we do with it? And I remember maybe it was the first week when we opened the company, they're calling me about a leak, and we need to get a roofer. And first thing I did was, all right, I need to jump on the roof. And even the roofer was looking at me, seriously? Because I was dressed like Jerron at the beginning. I thought I'm the big manager. I come with a suit, with a button-down shirts. But I told him, I need to get on the roof. You're telling me there's soft spots. I don't even know what it means yet. It took me a couple of months, I think, to understand what vanity is every time they talked to me, because I knew English. I knew how to speak English. My English was fine. But the business language, I didn't know it. And so every time we had a backup, every time we had a hole in the ceiling, we had a leak, I would go meet the professionals on site. I remember opening up myself, septic tanks and all the crap coming out with all the roaches. But it gave me the opportunity to understand, first of all, what they present to me as the problem, so I know what the solution is. Mm-hmm. So not only from the pricing perspective, now you telling me a quote, I know if it makes sense or not, but also the timing. Or maybe you come up with an idea, I'll tell you, hey, why don't you try to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll have a cheaper solution, more efficient and quicker. And for the first year and a half, a lot of my time was actually on the field. Then we saw that it's kind of work, and then we always wanted to explore going outside of Broward area, because obviously, if we're looking at 2017, 2018, the price per door back then, we'll say now it will sound like a joke, but it was $120,000 a door, maybe $130,000 a door to $150,000. And we started looking at the Jacksonville market. It was $40,000 a door, $30,000 a door sometimes. There were really great opportunities, again, coming from the owner side, not the management side. The opportunities for the investors were obviously there, and the base and the risk was very low. And we started buying there. We bought 355 units in 2018. A year later, we bought another 288 units. All of a sudden, we took this portfolio of 200 units, 300 units that were scattered. We're managing almost 900 units over less than 2 years since I came here.
Wow.
So that was a big change.
Jump.
Big jump, big change. Jump. We bought the 288 units, was October of 2019. Not 3 months in, you start COVID, everything kind of shifted, which was a very big challenge as well. But still, the company, we kept growing, we kept pushing. I always say, there isn't a day almost that we don't learn something new in this business. You always think, like we mentioned it before, that we think we understand and know everything in this business, but there's always new ideas, there's always different things to do, how to become more efficient, what things you can charge back to the residents and whatnot, how do you affect the NOI. And it's not only a matter of us understanding it as the managers or the executive of the company, how do you make sure that the porter or the leasing agent have the same understanding as you? Because if they won't understand what them saving money to the company or them charging the tenant how they should, how is it affecting in the bigger scale of it, it's really, really hard to operate. You have to be on the same, they have to be on the same side as you and with the same mindset. And we're investing a lot of time in those things in the management company.
So I think you might have skipped over a little bit. So the last 3 to 4 years now, we're fast forwarding to 2024, you now have how many doors under management at SAR?
About 1,100.
1,100, amazing. Okay.
And you guys own and operate them.
Own and operate, and this year we started also, until now until this year we didn't offer third-party management, but we did do it this year, obviously because, we were still projecting to get at least 300 to 500 to 1,000 units a year back in 2017, 18, 19, and then everything kind of shifted after COVID. We were still able to buy a big property 2 years ago, 240 units. But then 23, 24 comes in and it's pretty much standstill. So how do you grow the business still? And it was really will come from the management side.
And now does the owner, does he have interest in growing the business? Like he's 60, like what's his?
Oh yeah. He's still, for him.
He's just raring to go.
We're looking at the big companies as American Landmark. They manage and operate over 50,000 units at this time. And, when you're looking at the things that other management companies do, and I'm talking about the really big ones, we're no different than them other than the unit count as for procedures. And a lot of the times we see even things that we brought a lot of procedures to the company. From being CPA, sometimes you can't shut it off.
Sure.
And things that other people may not think as control measures or audit measures or compliance measures, we have it in us. We can't shut it off. So we started implementing a lot of those things on the back end of our business, and you can see that the way they're operating is no different than us. So the growth, we still see ourselves growing and projecting to become a 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 units property management company.
Awesome.
Love it.
Love
it.
Aggressive growth.
And so you've bought in Jacksonville, you've bought in South Florida. Are there other markets you're in right now?
No, at the moment we stick to those basically after COVID, because right before COVID we were still exploring the Carolinas. We went to Tennessee. We were always looked at Texas, not only from obvious opportunities there, but also scattered the risk. We see what happened in Florida market with
diversify
insurance.
a little bit. Yeah,
and we're looking at rates, and if you have your properties a little bit scattered on different states, that can drive the price of insurance, for example, drastically overall on your portfolio.
What do you think's interesting today? Like, what do you guys? Let's talk about acquisition side. Or what are you guys doing? What are your strategies to acquire property, and what markets do you think are interesting? Are you still like gung ho on Jacksonville? How do you feel about South Florida right now?
No, South Florida. It's always going to be a very hot market. There's a great saying, all of us knows it. When is the best time to buy a property? 5 years ago and today.
Yeah.
If you're looking at South Florida, you don't have too much new units count coming in.
Yep.
Jacksonville in the last 3 years, I think we got almost 6,000 doors a year.
Wow.
New ones.
So that's the rents.
And that hurts the rents, hurts the occupancy, and there still have so much land there that's being developed. Again, what we see, at least from our point of view over the Jacksonville market, that 2025, they're only going to deliver about 1,500 units. So we're finishing the cycle, and we're going to see the growth in the rents and the occupancy coming
in the next
back
2 to 3 years. Yeah.
In the next 2 to 3 years.
So that's how you feel about that?
On Jacksonville specific, yes. Obviously, we are in contact with every broker that works in the markets we're at, big and small, to get the data, to get the information. We talk to we're meeting developers. We're driving around our properties constantly to see what's being developed. Hey, they just took off that forest here. Yeah, they just built a new mall here, a strip mall there, a new gas station, because these are typically the things that suggest that new units are coming in.
So you chose Jacksonville because the basis felt cheap when you initially bought in, right?
I won't say cheap. It felt cheaper than South Florida.
Yeah.
At the point.
Yeah, relatively speaking, right? But why not Tampa, or I don't know, name a few other places, Atlanta, that you could have gone to? What kind of really kind of pushed you into the Jacksonville market? The reason why I'm asking is I know Jacksonville pretty well, and we've done some analysis as well personally on where we might spend some time. My fiance's from Jacksonville. Most of our family's there. I spend probably 2-3 trips a year in that Jacksonville market. So,
we wanted at the beginning to stay around Florida. So going to Atlanta, going to Georgia, going to the Carolinas.
Got it.
It was, let's first see that we can manage within Florida, also from the perspective of knowing the rules. You don't have to change too many things. The eviction processes.
Good point.
You want to stick to the areas that you know, because each state really have some things that are different. So, one of the things we learned throughout the years from investment perspective, if you invest in Tennessee, they reset the property tax once every 4 years, not at the purchase. So if you look at that market, you'll see the cycle of every 4 years. You see the sales and the purchases. A lot of times people try to time it because you don't have a reset. As for Tampa, I love personally Tampa. We went there. We saw some properties out there. Why we didn't go specific to Tampa and we went to Jacksonville wasn't a really cause. And then we just hit there, and it was really a period of time that they sold thousands of units, and you have to choose between a unit. I remember a property that the owner wanted to get like 50 a door. Okay, I talked to the other executives. They're like, "Hey, we toured this. What do you want to offer them? Give them 30." Like, this was the discussion there. And when they sold it, the properties to us, we bought. I think when the first property we bought under 50,000 a door, it was around 40-something thousand.
It's crazy.
Today, maybe my renovation, if I want to do including plumbing, electric, to gut a unit, cost me probably more.
Yeah.
And I remember that we saw how much they bought it for. So, okay, we buy it for about 30 to 50,000.
They buy it for 15,000 or something, or 20,000.
The cheapest one was 7.
Yeah.
Imagine buying 7,000 a door for a property with 300 units.
Oh my gosh,
it's crazy. It was insane, and we still felt. Because even at the time that we bought it around, I think it was 45 a door maybe, the average rent was about 450 to 500. So it already makes sense, because the rents are there. Because when you looked at South Florida at that time, people were asking 120, 130 a door, but the rents were under 1,000 at that point still. We had a property in Davie that we bought at the end of 2016, like December of 2016. The average rent was under 750. Today, skip forward a little bit, we're getting almost on average $2,000 a unit. So at the time, the base compared to the average rent, it just made more sense.
Are you selling anything? Have you guys sold anything, or you just hold everything?
So the older portfolio, I call it, with all the single family homes, we sold all of them.
Great.
2021, we sold about 40-something houses in the span of...
You 1031 exchange, or or not doable, or what's...
Since the investors are Israeli, we can do the 1031 here. No problem.
Here in the U.S. Yep.
No problem. But from tax perspective, Israeli authorities see it as a sale. They don't accept the 1031 exchange.
Oh, so it didn't make any sense.
You can take the risk, whether or not they're catching it, but they're very familiar with the American investment and the 1031, so they're looking for those things.
Sure.
And the biggest risk is, let's say that here I sold a property and my taxes were 20%. I go to Israel to tell us, oh, no, you have to pay on that gain 25. I only paid the difference of 5%. That's how it typically works because of the trust between the different countries. When you're looking at 1031 exchange, for example, they'll tell you, all right, you paid there 0, you owe us the 25%. When you will sell eventually here, the U.S. won't tell you, oh, you already paid the 25%,
cool.
don't pay us anything, we're good.
Yeah. So
And there's a very big risk of paying double taxes.
Got it. So the risk isn't worth it.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And, we talked to a lot of the bigger firms, international firms, the KPMGs, the EYs, and they always try to protect us from those things. And for everyone who's doing any investments with every international investor, learn the taxes in the specific country, because maybe here we'll give them an advice and we'll tell them about the 1031, but then they may have a double tax or big issues on their original country.
Got it. So from that note, the owner, the Nathan family, they're not so incentivized to sell and buy bigger and bigger. Not that they don't want to buy bigger, but every time they sell, they have a tax event.
They have a tax event, but the money was used to buy the bigger properties. Obviously, they bought at a very cheap base point, their portfolio. Sure. And I think what we did with the single-family homes, knowing that we're going to sell them and it's going to take about, 6 to 8 months, we assumed, we went to a bank, we did some sort of refinancing, got some of the money out to already be able to buy the next property that we wanted. And eventually we were able to increase the amount of units, almost triple it, without really bringing too much money, extra money from Israel.
Great.
Just using the profits that were here.
From those homes.
From the
part
homes,
of that
from
and part of the refinance.
Part of the refinance.
And the refinance
financing.
trick still works pretty well, it sounds like, right? You're not paying taxes on that.
We're still in the business of, yes, we do want to sell. But in some cases, and we have some properties that we did a refi, we even still own some of these properties. So from their investment side, they took all the equity out, and I'm putting aside the cash flow that comes in throughout the years. They took 100% of the equity out, and they still own the property. So from investor perspective, that's a win all day. He has no risk. He already took the money out.
Infinite returns. Yeah.
Infinite returns. And if we were able to just do refinancing and keep the properties forever, it's always a good thing. I'll correct myself. It's not always a good thing. It depends on the property type. Because if you have an older property and you invested X amount of money in the initial years, if you're going to keep it for another 5 or 10, you need to anticipate you'll have to
Capital
invest some money inside.
Yeah.
And based on your business plan, you have to decide if you're planning on doing it or not. If you're buying more of a core property, something that is brand new, and you don't have to worry about too much deferred maintenance and things like that, if you can refi it forever, just do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When it comes to sourcing opportunities, sourcing deals, you mentioned you're in touch with all the brokers. Are you spending a lot of your time? Where are you spending most of your time? Are you spending time on the hunt? Are you spending time managing these assets? What's that look like?
So at the beginning, it was really everything out of everything.
Yeah.
And I always say it's a 24/7. You can't really switch. And I remember the nights when you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning with an idea just because you were thinking about it while you were still sleeping. So it really depended on the time. Because we had times that, if I'm looking at 2021, I think we underwrote almost 100 different properties in the state of Florida. Wow. Almost every day we saw the new opportunities coming in. We would bid on them. We were chasing the deals. Many deals we came out to be in the top 3. And, these are deals that sometimes after the first round, you have 60 offers.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we did compete with the bigger firms, with the institutional funds. And, but one things we always did, and it's a very good suggestion to anyone who wants to buy, especially on the multifamily side. Don't make the numbers work. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. People will be like, oh, I think my market rent is going to be XYZ. Great. That's what you believe. This is what you saw on the comps. If the numbers at the end of the day doesn't make sense, don't tell yourself, oh, I'll be able to get another $50 or $100 later on. If it makes no sense, it makes no sense. And a lot of times people try to justify the investment, and it hurts them on the back end because they want to do the purchase from the personal side, from the emotional side.
Or pride, I even fall into this sometimes where, I have my unit count. I've got 37 doors. I want to get past the 50 number. Like that's my next, my next mile marker. And, Larry and I, he was looking at a quadplex for me, and, it's a decent deal. There was some seller financing that might be involved. Larry and I actually have to talk about it after this podcast, but maybe not so decent of a deal without the seller financing, and I think the seller may actually want you to have traditional financing because he'd rather have his money, and we're competing against another offer. So, but my point is that I've got to stop myself from getting so just invested in, okay, let's buy a quadplex. So now I'm at 41 before that's another step closer to 50. It becomes like a pride thing, and it's easy to back your way into negative cash flow or into a problem, especially if there's some of this deferred maintenance or, again, this quadplex we're looking at is, I've seen the pictures inside. It's going to need some work, So it's not just the price; it's the capex, capital expenditure, the amount that you're going to have to put in to fix each of these units up once you turn them over. These are not $2,000 turnaround for paint and a punch list. This is, new cabinets, maybe new flooring, maybe new everything. Yeah. So yeah.
You know what else I struggle with besides that is you get brokers that are trying to help you out and bring deals to you. And sometimes they're bringing them to you first or pre-market, or they're giving you the heads up or whatever it is, and I genuinely want to do these deals to like, I'm a broker, so maybe you guys don't always appreciate this as much as I do. Like, they're trying hard to bring me a deal and they're thinking about me first, and then I'm just like saying no most of the time, right?
Said a different way, if you keep saying no, you're off the list.
Two things. One, I'm like a people pleaser. Two, I don't want to be off the list.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right?
So for that, I can say that, and obviously, I know there are some brokers and there are some deals that we see that depends on the personal relationship we have with the specific broker. We really will know if we saw it first, how long.
Sure.
We'll know all the backstory. But, if I'm looking at the bigger multifamily side, for example, I know there are some, and we know that this is how this side of the business works. A lot of the times, the funds will sell one to another the same property over and over and over and over again, because the funds have to sell it typically after 5 years. So if I'm a fund holder and I know this operator is another fund, I know he's doing a great job. I'll come in, I'll do my thing for the next 5 years, he'll buy it again from me, and so on and so forth. When eventually those things goes to the brokers and coming to the common people's market, probably these guys are already said no. So these are the things we also had to take in consideration. As for getting the offers from the brokers and please them, the only thing you can do and be fair with them is underwrite it. And if you're not interested, explain to them why.
Exactly. Tell them right away, be responsive, and tell them why it's a no or how it could be a yes.
Because, we had some deals that we saw that came through our desks, and when we talked to the broker and we told them, listen, something doesn't work here, sometimes they came up and told the truth and like, yeah, you're not the first one. We're hearing it from him. So we were honest enough to tell them. So either talk to the seller, tell her something is not working, or try a different perspective of it. If multiple people doing the underwriting and gets to the same conclusion. And for us, from coming from the accounting world and being CPAs, we always coming from a defensive point of view of looking at things. We don't want to. We hate risk.
Conservative.
We're very conservative in our underwriting. Sometimes we even lost deals over it. Some of them over time may be a good deal, but to that specific point, when we did the underwriting, it didn't make sense
at that moment in time. Sure.
And you have to stand by it.
Right.
Some deals, obviously today I'll drive by some of these properties. I'm like, damn, I could have bought it just at this price.
But if you use that logic, everything. 10 years ago, you could have bought and looked like a superhero. So it doesn't,
But those things at the long run really protects you, as the representative, as the owner, from the management side, from everything. Every deal that we underwrote, we always made sure that we drive around to the neighborhood. We go check what the competitors are getting. Because you can tell me, this is our market rents. Yeah, but you're also giving $500 concession. So what really is your market rent?
Yeah.
Your competitors are renting for this amount. This is what they're asking.
Or
it's really important to do those things.
First month free, but rent is X more every month going forward.
And again, if we're looking at the different markets, some markets, especially today, requires those concessions. Fine, great, I'm up for it. But let's underwrite it including those concessions and then see what the numbers are. Obviously, if we know and we're anticipating that at some point the cycle with discounts is going to be, you'll have to do less discounts and do less concessions, then we'll take it in consideration as well. But you have to take those things and not look at it things, the market rent is $2,000 because the broker told me. Call the property, see what they're offering.
Yeah. No,
100%.
That makes sense. Let's talk about the property management side of things, because you've spoken to me on a number of occasions about some of the different things that you're doing and that you've implemented in the last few years that maybe some property management companies are doing, but many are not, and that are really differentiating you and bringing home those higher returns for your one main client, but you also have other clients that are invested.
Yeah, we have about
in
30 investors.
Yeah, 30 investors. So tell us some of those things that you implemented in the last few years that you're really proud of.
So the first thing is really to always keep an open mind. Mm-hmm. When we hire a property manager, we always ask them, hey, what were you doing on previous companies? And be very, we always listen to what happens on the field. If it's talking to the porters, talking to the maintenance guys, talking to residents when we're on site, and obviously talking to our staff. Because based on a situation and a risk or a problem that we have, we're always trying to come up with a solution. A small thing, and I know today more and more people are using it, but still not as many as you would think, is using an alternative for a security deposit. There's so many companies today in the market that give an alternative for the security deposits, and it works both on the benefit of the residents and you as an owner. First of all, for the residents, typically their moving funds will be way less because they're cutting the cost at the beginning. And from the owner side, you probably will be able to get more security for less money from the tenant. And it's an option that if someone is not utilizing it and using it today, it's really a must-go. And it doesn't matter if you have a duplex, a single-family home, or 300-unit complexes, you have to give that other option to the residents. Another thing is...
So let's time out on that real quick, because in Florida here, if you're watching the podcast and you're an owner, there's a relatively recent new addition to the law in the last year where there's now, it's legal to offer a monthly payment towards the security deposit that you work out in your lease. Instead of demanding a full, let's say, $2,000 security deposit a month, you could say, well, you'll pay me $250 per month towards a security deposit. And the benefit, there's benefits to both parties. The obvious benefit to the tenant is they don't have to come up with $2,000 up front. Okay. The benefit to the landlord is that, let's say that they can keep charging that $250 beyond the $2,000 amount. They can keep charging that, and if the tenant's in there for 5 years and they're paying an additional $250 per month, that's a windfall to the landlord.
So if you're able to charge the tenant additional $250, that's amazing.
I'm using an example. It's probably not $250.
No, so we did do something like that. You know, when we started talking to all these companies who offers the security deposits.
Yeah, elaborate on the companies too.
So
Rhino is one of them.
Rhino is one of them. They're one of the most famous ones. There's the guarantors, there's lease lock, there's really a whole list of them. But it's very important to have a long conversation with them because each one has some differences in the way they're doing the underwriting, in the way their claim process is going. So when we started using those security deposit alternatives, it was during COVID. You know, we had tenants, you had a moratorium, all of a sudden you have someone's not paying you and you cannot kick them out. And we're like, listen, even if, and at that time we had 1 month, maybe 2 months deposit, you know, first and last. The tenant was there for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. It was crazy as for the amount of the loss that we accumulated. And we're like, there's got to be another solution, and this is where we found out about Rhino. At the time, they really underwrote any tenant for any amount. So if you're a tenant and you had right now you're telling me you're under eviction, and Rhino is willing to write me a policy that secure 9 months of rent, yeah, I'll move you in. I'm not worried about it. I'm not going to have a loss. If you're paying me, great. You're paying them for the policy. I have a very high insurance that I'm covered. So the risk, again, it's all about risk mitigation. The risk is very low. Problem for us with Rhino was that after COVID, they paid a lot of money to a lot of owners, and they kind of changed their policy. So we got stuck with a lot of policies from residents who were already on site that had no coverage, and we had no security deposit. Wow. So it really put us at a bad spot. With a lot of them, we were able to tell them, hey, if you're not renewing with them, give us a security deposit. Some of them, we told them, hey, pay us over 5 months, and we find the alternatives to do it. We're still using Rhino in some occasions. Right now, we're transferring to a different company called the Guarantors. Again, same idea. Their criteria of underwriting and how their policy works makes sense. And in most of the cases, it's very important to understand, the owner doesn't have any cost. The cost is to the tenant. So us as landlords offering this doesn't really cost us anything.
But just to clarify, so we're not confusing anyone, there's two different alternatives three different alternatives you implement. Number one is traditional security deposit.
You always have to offer
$2,000 up front. Great, awesome. But the other two alternatives is they can go with a third-party security deposit insurance
company.
It's more
of a surety bond.
A surety bond, right? That you will give them the opportunity and allow them to do.
Correct.
In some cases, and if they qualify, of course.
If they qualify based on their and a lot of the times, some of those companies, the guarantors, for example, they will approve you. But the cost that you will have will be dependent on your
higher
credit.
on your background.
On your background,
If
on
you
your
had two
credit.
evictions in the last 7 years, then it's going to be much higher.
But they will guarantee you, and with the guarantors, you can be, from landlord perspective, we can be guaranteed up to the full 12 months of the rent. So
that's crazy.
Or
Or the third option is self-insuring, right?
Yeah,
That's what I was kind of mentioning is the
Yeah.
self-insuring where you're creating a payment plan
So
to
with
go
the self-
towards the security deposit.
with the self-insurance, and we're not really calling, we used it for a little bit, because when we started talking to some of these companies, and at the end of the day, they are insurance companies, right? So when they're doing the underwriting and they're telling you what's the premium is going to be for what coverage, you understand the risk. You understand how they're underwriting it. And in some cases, we looked at it and we're like, why would I pay you what I collect from the tenant if I can collect it from the tenant, take the risk on myself, and keep the money? It's affecting my NOI. I'll take the risk. I'm willing to take it, because if you're willing to take it, who am I to not do the same? And the difference is, and we did it for, again, it's a big numbers game, right? If I have 1,000 tenants, 5 to 10% maybe over the year I sent to evictions, but all of them are paying me X amount of dollars every month, it really mitigates the risk. The difference is that, just like the surety bond, it's not goes towards their security deposit. It's an extra fee. And the easiest way for me, typically how I explain it to my employees that had some hard times to understanding it, is you're a tenant, you want to move in, let's say I want to take $2,000 of security deposit from you. And you're telling me, listen, I want to move in, I love the apartment, I can pay you the first month rent, I don't have those extra $2,000. So now you're asking me to take a bigger risk because I don't have the extra security deposit. So I'm telling you, you know what, let's do a deal. Instead of you paying me $2,000 for rent and $2,000 for security deposit, I'll charge you $2,100 a month. That makes sense to everyone, to the tenant, to the leasing agents, and they're telling you, yeah, I'll pay you more. I understand you're taking the risk. I'll pay more of a fee, of a rent, of a fee, or call it however you want, every month. And we gave that option to tenants, and it worked great. Obviously, we had some tenants that eventually went through eviction, but we had a lot of tenants that it really helped them moving in quicker and faster and save a lot of money, because even if you look at what they paid over a course of a year, was still not even a deposit, because we charged about $60 from each tenant. It wasn't something too crazy.
So it might take you on average about 1.5 to 2 years maybe to get what would be the equivalent of a deposit?
Of a deposit,
okay.
And it made a lot of sense. In our leases, we also made sure that they understand we give them the option at any point to stop that fee and give us a security deposit.
That's what the law says, that you must offer that.
We always give them the option at any point. If they want to do it, we'll be able to.
I think it's a great program and genius. Again, you've got to qualify your tenants. Obviously, if these are tenants that are really iffy and you're really just trying to populate a building and you've got a bunch of vacancies and they had an eviction a year ago, you
don't want to take the risk. But if you have a tenant with a 700 credit score and he makes 4 times the rent,
right,
why not helping him out at the beginning?
Yeah.
For the tenants who are typically had the evictions, have a lower credit score, they already know that they will be required to put a higher deposit up front. They understand it, so it's not a big surprise to them. So any option that you give them as an alternative is great for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. So there's that program. That's awesome. What other things have you implemented?
If we're looking at the type of assets that we manage, and to me, it's not even the type of assets that we manage. We typically manage about C plus, B minus. We're not in the AAA new construction on the beach type of things, but for most of us here in the U.S., we're typically getting paid biweekly. And then comes rent week at the beginning of the month, that they typically also have their car payments, and that's a very tough week for people to pay a lot of money out of pocket when they're living anyway paycheck to paycheck or anything close to it. And from that understanding, we started using Flex. Flex is a program, it's a third-party vendor that gives the tenant the option to pay his rent throughout the month. So you as a landlord, tenant needs to pay Flex at the beginning of the month until the 3rd. If he paid half of his rent until the 3rd, you as a landlord get 100% of the rent to your bank account. Tenant is not late on your ledger. He doesn't get a late fee, no 3-day notice, not any of those things. Now, from the back end, the tenant has to pay Flex the other portion of his rent before the end of the month. If he's doing it, Flex will allow him to enroll for the next month as well.
That's really cool. I've not heard this.
The cost to the tenant is typically around $20. And the great thing about it, $20, first of all, it's way cheaper than any late fee. It's cheaper than putting it on your credit card and paying the 3% fees typically. If you're over $1,000, it's already $30. And it doesn't affect their personal credit if they're using it. Let's say the risk for Flex, the tenant can screw them over not paying another half of a month. And then they're just not allowing, and they're going through collection directly through the tenant.
Oh, good point. They'll just take them to collections and do that.
They'll
big
worry
company,
about
they
it.
can do that. Yeah. Versus
But
individual
for us
landlord.
as landlords, we started seeing, if we started a program about 2 years ago, and for months to months, you see more and more people enroll it, and we actually push them to enroll. For me, 100% of my tenants should be on that.
Yeah.
I'll get the money up front, no late fees. I'm good for it, and a lot of the times it's really educating also the tenants and telling them, listen, you're paying a portion of your rent at the beginning of the month. Because let's say I'm not talking about the resident who doesn't pay at all, but someone doesn't have the full $2,000 or $1,500 to pay. So he gives you what he has. He has $700, $800. He's still going to get a $100 late fee, if not more in some occasions, depends on your policy. So why not saving that money? Because before the end of the month, he'll cover the rest. He's not going through eviction. He's paying you the late fee. And to us, it's great. Pay me as long as you're paying me the late fee. I won't say no. But
have you run the true numbers of whether the late fees add up to be beneficial? It'd be interesting to run that experiment, but I guess you'd really just have to have all tenants on Flex or no tenants on Flex with late fees, and you'd have to run the numbers to see what.
Obviously, the $20 that goes to Flex, I'm not getting them.
No, I know that.
So getting the late fees is always good.
Right.
But
some of those end up in eviction.
But at the end of the day, and I know Jerron will hate that sentence, I'm not in the business of evictions. I want to keep the tenants in the units, and I want them to pay me.
Of course.
And one of the things that we hate about the late fees and going through the payment programs and plans with residents is the surety of when you're getting the money. And when the tenant has the option to pay whenever he wants, it puts us at risk. Because a lot of the times, our policy says you give the 3-day notice. By the 15th, between the 15th to the 20th of the current month, we typically send 2 evictions. The tenants that we had no communication with, that didn't do any payment plan or any of it. But what do you do with all those tenants that months after months, by the 28th or by the 25th, they're covering the rent? You cannot.
They just barely make it.
They just barely make it.
Yeah.
But they always make it. And you look 3 years of records, and they always make it. They always closed out the rent. But you as a landlord, you're taking a big chance of saying, all right, this tenant I'm not going to send to eviction because he's typically paying. No, it doesn't work this way.
The ones who are on the fence, they're perfect for Flex.
We have the rules of discrimination. We have the rules of what if the neighbor hears, hey, you sent me to eviction, you didn't send him. So those are things that as a management company we have to be very firm about. And this is also a lot of work that's coming from the property itself and the staff on site about documenting the communication.
Fair housing.
If someone wants to do a payment plan, fine. And typically if someone will come and ask for a payment plan, we'll always ask for a payment of at least 50% of what he owes. You don't want to give him, hey, let's do a payment plan, I'll give you $100 today, or I'll come pay next week. And these are things that, from you said what we're part of the things we're doing. We have a weekly meeting with every property going over each case of every resident that is paying late, about evictions, about stipulations. Did he make the payment? Did he not make the payment? We always check those things on a weekly basis. The assistant managers typically on site, this is their main job, doing the soft collection, calling them day in, day out, and a lot of documentation of those conversations. Very important.
Talk about the software that you use and the apps that you use. I know you've implemented some really kind of cutting edge type of technology. What does that look like?
So we're very techy. We always try to look for things that will make our life easy. Being a CPA, we love Excels. but not everyone knows how to use Excel. And so first of all, from the operational side, at the beginning with the smaller portfolio, we used Buildium. And Buildium 7-8 years ago were not the Buildium that you see today if you're using them. Buildium did change a lot of the things in the software that they didn't have 7 years ago. And I remember when we first started working with them, at the beginning I had a monthly meeting with our account manager and telling him, listen, operational-wise, Buildium is amazing. Tenant communication, online payments, everything is great. Accounting side of it sucked. They really had a lack of a lot of things that got us to the point that we had to use QuickBooks for accounting and then Buildium for operational, and we did the connections between the two manually. 2020, we moved to Yardi because our portfolio grew up. We understood that we need a bigger software with more accounting capabilities. There are different softwares who are not who's good at just like Yardi. There's AppFolio. There's RealPage have their own thing. So there's a lot of good softwares out there, but eventually, from the operational side, it's not as much as user friendly. So one of the things we did for the different aspects of different day-to-day stuff, we try to find different solutions. For inspections and work orders, we're not really using Yardi. We're using a third party that's connected to Yardi. But each one of our employees on the maintenance side or any employee have access to it on their personal cell phones. They have it on their phones. We install it as soon as we hire them. All the work orders, clothing them, getting the information from the tenant, pictures. Again, documentation is very important. And it really makes things easy because if you try to use whatever the software typically gives you, it's not always a good solution because maybe the software is good for one thing, it's not great for the other thing. But if you're using the off-the-shelf big softwares, they all have third party from every aspect of the business that can
integrate easily. Yeah.
So it's really important to check those. From operational side, we use Monday. It's typically something that is more on the marketing side, on high-tech companies, not really on property management. But we took it and we have today a couple of dozens probably of boards for the different properties, for the different positions. We have it for evictions. We have it for QA. We have it for our applications
This is like
department.
task management, right?
Task management. But you can really do a lot more than
detailed
just
project management.
But if you understand the logic of how the system works, you can really use it for whatever you need. We even have tracking every communication we have with an employee. So our employee files are being managed on Monday. So really, you can do everything that you want if you understand the logic of it.
Interesting.
Throughout the years, you had different employees, different managers. They always communicate between themselves. All of a sudden, 3 years later, you try to find something. We don't have that manager or his phone anymore. So we started using Slack. I think it was last year. Slack is just like a WhatsApp, basically, but it's a corporate one. So the history is always there. We give them a user. We use it, they have the different groups. So just for the leasing, just for that property, just for that property, for this group of managers, for that group of managers.
And that's important because you have almost 50 employees, right? You were
About
telling
50
me.
employees.
Does everybody pretty much communicate on there through their phones and everything?
Yeah, and it can be something as simple as, if we're looking at the communication between our compliance department who's running, we centralized the application throughout our portfolio. It's being done from our HQ. We have 2 girls who's doing an amazing job. We did that to really help the properties because you want the leasing agent to spend more time on the phones, getting new leads, showing apartments, and not trying to get a pay stub and understand if it's real or not. So we centralized the application. So you see all day in the groups, hey, I have this tenant here is filing for application now. Great, we got it covered. Hey, the result came back, communicated back to him. And those things really help run things more smoothly and more efficiently.
I'm sure you evaluated more than one. Did you just go to Slack by default, or did you look at like Google Chat and stuff like that?
We saw Google Chat. We saw Teams. Eventually, you can also use WhatsApp, right?
Yeah.
For us, we use Slack because we like the integrations there. because even Slack can be integrated to multiple things. I can integrate Slack to Monday, and then if I have a task from Monday that is completed, it can post it into Slack, and then that specific group knows about it. Slack can even integrate to my HR, to my payroll system. So every time an employee has his anniversary, it's coming from that, already sending in the group, congratulations. Like a lot of those things that we don't always think on the day-to-day basis, and we want to make sure it's getting done, so we use technology for that. Obviously, we could do a whole podcast just on AI integrations today through the real estate market. I just went to a conference last week, and they talked about it a lot, that today you have AI solutions of leasing agents that's scheduling the tours, the move-ins, answering all the questions, to the point that people are coming at the day of the move-in, coming to the office. Hey, may I speak to Susan? We don't have a Susan. That was the AI this whole time.
No way.
And there's very great solutions. There are solutions today that when you are, it's getting scary, right? We all know Skynet is real, but
it's getting there.
It's getting there. But today you can get on a call, and if in the past you saw the AI took a few seconds to respond, so you felt like you're talking to a robot or a software, today in many cases you won't even know that you're on the phone with an AI.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys saw how they did the last ChatGPT meeting when they showed the new features, and they put one AI talking to another AI. This is crazy. Yeah. This is crazy where it's going. So definitely AI is going to be a big part of our business in the next year or two.
Good.
We'll see more and more
customer service and all that. Yeah. Move-ins. Yeah. That's great. Tell us, a couple things. One is, what are the type of owners, investors that you're looking to manage their properties for? Are they independent owners? Can they have houses? Can it be condos? Can it be not that you're going to be an association management company, but can it be almost any asset type and any size and scope? What does that look like?
Because we came from managing the smaller portfolios with the scattered single-family homes, 50, 60 of them, and the smaller duplexes, fourplexes, and then we moved to the bigger communities. We pretty much know how to manage every type of asset. So everyone who has properties as small as single-family home, condo, to 300 units, 400 units, 500 units, will be able to manage it. We always look at ourselves as owner-to-owner type of management. We understand the needs. We came from there. We were screwed many times before in the past. We understand when the numbers make sense or not. If you're gonna ask the owner when was the point that he said he wants his own management company, it was that one incident when he asked the property management about an invoice of $5,000 for a wall unit.
A wall unit, $5,000.
And he wasn't sure exactly what he's explaining to him, and he told me, listen, I wasn't understanding what he's talking. I actually Googled what is a wall unit is, and I see it costs $200, and he actually billed us $5,000. Going forward with this, when I came here and we just bought this property in Davie, they sent us the bills, they did the exterior paint. I was able to paint the building, I think it was 2 years ago. I don't know, let's say it was 8 buildings, we paid about $40,000, $50,000 maybe. They charged us almost $40,000 to $50,000 per building for exterior paint. And again, no one questioned them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and really I'm saying it's unfortunate that there are multiple companies who are doing those things, and they're taking advantage of the owners who are not necessarily in the country or in the state, justifying one expense or another. And this is why when we decided, and we only decided to do third party this year, not only from the growth perspective, but also if you would ask me 2-3 years ago, I would tell you I'm not sure I'm ready for it. I can manage to myself. I can take the risk. I can hammer myself on the head if I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
But only after 23 and the that we invested a lot in those procedures and implementing them, and we started seeing that it actually works, this is where we felt comfortable to offer the services to someone else. We wouldn't do it beforehand, and we know each other for years, and we never talked to you about managing for someone.
This is a new thing,
It's definitely a new thing. One of the two things we changed over the last 2 years was, like you said, how do I spend my time between wearing all the hats, and where do I focus on? So we brought in some more executives into the company. Our COO is actually is Israeli as well. We brought him and his family about 2 years ago, give or take. He's a civil engineer. The guy used to manage ground up construction for high rise in Israel. He worked with a Chinese company, and they built thousands of units. And he's our COO, so operational wise, he's the professional to do that. If you're looking at our marketing guy, who's doing, he's our CRO. He's not only responsible for the marketing, but also for pricing criteria. What is the pricing? Market research criteria. How do you sell it to someone else? Training the employees on sales techniques. All those things. It's kind of complicated to describe what exactly his position is, but imagine you have Unilever here in the U.S. that sells 90% of our food probably, and you have Walmart. So they need to buy shelf space in Walmart and then run all the promotions. He was doing the same thing in Israel. So between the Israeli Unilever and the Israeli Walmart, he's coming from marketing, sales strategies, and we brought him in to do.
So you've created a very corporate environment, which is that's kudos to you for doing that. And one of the key things I'm hearing here are these are people that are well qualified and that are very detail oriented.
Yes.
People that are looking at the fine print. And I can tell you already, from our business phone calls that we've had, and along with your speaking to your COO, very sharp guy, the questions that I get and the issues that you all are focused on are very detailed, and that just means that you're miles ahead of many people, and you're working on the fine tuning everything, which is important.
If we can, if I'm looking from eviction side, if I can save one tenant from moving out and actually close his balance, if I can save one tenant from moving out and renewing his lease, I'll do it because, again, our mindset is always the NOI, and many times you as an owner will say, hey, I have this tenant, he's paying me, let's say, $2,000 a month, he's coming up for renewals, I want to get my 5%. Why? Because it's a thumb rule that you need to increase by 5%. All right, I'll ask you a question. What happens if he's not agreeing to renew for the 5%? If it was a few years ago and you have a line of applications, by all means, move him out. Say bye-bye. But what happens today? All right, let's say he's moving out. What is your actual market rent today? Sometimes today it's actually even cheaper than what the guy who's been living with you for 7 years is paying.
Sure.
Because he got those 5% increases throughout the years, and he's a better tenant. He's always paying. Why would you move him? So we even took a strategy this year that in some cases, on some properties, we actually do renewals with zero increase. Mm-hmm. I don't want to move out for two reasons. One, I'll have to pay for the turn. And second, vacancy. I may have to give more concessions just to get someone new
concessions, commissions, vacancy.
And you got to run your numbers on the 5% for a year. Does it pay for the turn? At a minimum.
No, it's not.
The turn.
It's not. It's
and
not
the vacancy period. And there's probably a week or two vacancy period.
And in some cases, we even took it a step forward. And I said, all right, how much is a turn really going to cost me? Plus the vacancy, plus all of that. So what if not only that we're not going to increase the tenant, but because he's always paying on time and he's been such a good tenant, let's give him a present. And we gave TVs, we gave sound bars, we gave gift cards.
Yeah.
Not only that we didn't increase their rent, we gave them appreciation gift for them to stick with us for so long.
Positive reinforcement. That's interesting. You don't hear about that often. But,
And again, from cost perspective, it was a no-brainer. Yeah. And these are the type of things that we always do. You said we're looking at the smaller things that we can change on a daily basis. And it's part of it. It's getting and a lot of
just
these
trying to get
ideas,
incrementally better, just incremental,
case by case, one unit at a time, once to month. Everything counts because when you're looking at the bottom line, those things add up.
They do. Last question I have for you is where are you open to managing units? Obviously Jacksonville, obviously the South Florida area, Palm Beach, Broward, Miami-Dade.
Correct.
Yeah, that's for right now.
Yeah.
For now. Yeah.
Obviously,
Your
we're
presence may
planning,
expand.
We're
Yeah.
planning to expand, and if someone comes to us with a big property, anywhere in between, someone asked us the question, what would be the unit count that we need to get to a new market? So if it's within Florida, it's easier, because if you have 500 units or 400 units community, typically we'll try to get at least more than one. But if we get one big community, and we can work from there like a hub to go to the other ones, it makes sense. So, if I'm in Jacksonville today and you have something in Daytona, it's an hour drive, yeah, it's fine. Gainesville, pushing it. But part of our growth, eventually, we do plan to be national. So anywhere this thing will take us, we'll go.
I love it. Awesome.
Exciting, man. Exciting.
We love it. I love what I do. People are saying, when I say it's a 24/7, but you love what you do. You get up in the morning, you're excited, you're thinking about it, and bottom line, you're looking at not only on the employee level. You see them grow. You see when they started asking you the right questions, like you talk to Idan, and all of a sudden you hear all those questions from him. I'm standing from the side or sitting in my office, hearing him talking to you, and I'm like, good. I'm happy about it.
Yeah. He's thinking the right way.
He's thinking the right way.
Yeah.
And trying to get them to think outside of the box, and you see their growth, and you understand eventually, what is the biggest goal? It's including the investors, including us, including all of the people that works for us. We want to provide for our families. We want a secure job place, and we want to be appreciated. We want to love what we're doing. If we're looking at the service that we give the residents, you should see how many times the happiness of a leasing agent who helped a VA to get his apartment, or someone with her kids, and finally they find their safe haven and their four walls. And those things are a lot of times are being overlooked. But when you look at it from my point of view, when I'm looking at this whole thing from top, those things matters. You look at the Nathans, they're giving services to tens of thousands of elderly people. We are in the service industry. Many people will tell us, and we always debate on it, are we in the service industry? Are we selling a product?
It's a hybrid, but yeah.
It's
sure.
type of a hybrid, but eventually if you look at it.
It's a good thought experiment, yeah.
When you're renting the apartment, many times I'll tell you, when you're renting it, maybe you have the product at the beginning, but when you're really understanding it, it's
retention
not.
Is service.
It's
That's,
not, because
you want
the
tenant
first
retention.
thing people will do, he'll go check you on Google, he'll see the reviews. We are in the service industry, and once we understanding it, it really changes a little bit about your mindset. Yes, it's all about the final.
Yeah, rarely do they say, "Oh, the lawn didn't look great," and the bad reviews that you see of management companies or owners. It's the property manager didn't call me back, and they kept raising my rent to extreme amounts, and I told them, I was a longtime tenant and I couldn't afford it, and they needed to work with me, and they wouldn't, and they're just the worst, or they wouldn't send over pest control when I complained about it, and that kind of stuff. It is all 90% of it is service.
Correct. Yeah. And if we're looking at reviews, it's very hard to find a property management company with 5 stars, because
they only complain. They don't say they're amazing.
But we're the same. If you go to a restaurant and you had amazing service, it's very rare that you'll spend the time on the car to put a good
or
review.
whatever, right?
Yeah, totally.
But if you had a horrible experience,
you're going right there. You're pulling your phone out. Yeah.
And again, as long as we take things in perspective, it makes sense. So even when we're getting, and we do get every now and then the bad reviews, I'm looking at, okay, we're servicing 1,000. I got 1 bad review this month or 2 bad reviews this month. It's manageable.
Can't please everybody.
And when you go in and you actually check what caused it, many times you have you wouldn't be able to do anything to avoid it. But many times we take those things as part of our experience and training for everyone on site and tell them, hey, this should not escalate to that position. We could have done 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes if you need us as the executives and they want to talk to a manager and another manager, we're up for it. I remember, I know in some of the properties, I know a big majority of the tenants, especially the ones that's been with us for a long time, every time I go there, knock on their door, how are you? Everything's
nice.
good. How's the family? Like, it's part of it.
That's good.
It's part of it.
Make them feel like they're at home.
That's the idea.
And part of a family. Yeah, well, this is good stuff. Any other questions?
No, I think that's great, man. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, it's a great story. Success through your own vision and hard work, really. Yeah,
and
so kudos.
We hope to keep
Good job.
growing the company as much as we can. Really,
I'm sure
the
you
idea
will.
to become national. It's before I got here and we started writing the business plan. Before we operated one day as a management company, and me and Dimitri, the owner of SAR Management, we kind of sat down, both CPAs, writing a business plan. We know how to write a business plan, and I remember that, and we needed to do it a 5-year projection. And I remember every year anniversary of the company, I would go back in to see where we stand and to see that we were right on point. That's always amazing.
Good,
that's incredible.
Hitting on all cylinders. Yeah. Good job to that. So,
thank you.
Well, thanks again, Aviv. Congratulations. Thanks for being a part of this, and look forward to working together with you more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode of Real Deal Investing, please like and subscribe.